Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have the latest from the live radar, run through the latest weather warnings as we do have the preliminary warnings now issued for this big storm system that is going to be arriving through Friday, the first of potentially many severe low pressure systems that could move through between now and the end of January. We'll have a look at the latest UKV, looking at that system in detail, and my gosh, today the latest UKV is extreme. It is definitely on the stronger end of the spectrum, but it's one of the strongest in terms of wind gusts I've ever seen from the UKV model. Hopefully it moderates, because if it doesn't, I think we could be in store for widespread amber and red warnings, as we are seeing well over 100-mile-per-hour wind gusts across a large swathe of the Rub of Ireland, Northern Ireland and Scotland, with some towards the coast getting up towards 120 or 130. Really extreme. I do think it's overhyping it a little bit, but nonetheless we can't deny that is what the UKV is showing at the moment. Hopefully it does moderate it, or that could be one of the most severe storms we've seen in that area for many years. We'll then have a look at the latest from the longer range, as although yes, it is going to be going stormy later this week, there are still signs of maybe a Scandinavian high building in, but it does look like a more of a relentless westerly flow looks like it could dominate the end of January and potentially even the start of February. But as I've said many times before, things can change very quickly, as we do have a lot of conflicting long range signals. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, do like and subscribe. And remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Now, if you start on the live radar, you can see we are slowly turning a little bit more unsettled at the moment. It's not a quick transition to stormy conditions, it's a really gradual transition throughout this week. Still remaining very cold, and even when that big storm system arrives on Friday, it is going to have a big mild wedge initially, and then a very cold sort of front that is going to move through. We are going to see some very cold polar maritime air, so we could even see a bit of snow through the weekend. Again, not a classic northerly or easterly, but one of those where we could see lots of instability, lots of heavy showers, hail, snow, grout all mixing in. Could be pretty wild come the weekend. And it's all due to the fact that we've got this very cold plunge of air across North America at the moment. Of course, with the current presidential inauguration taking place indoors, it's that same exceptionally cold air that's going to get pushed across the Atlantic, engaging with the mild mid-Atlantic air, really powering up the jet stream, and by the end of the week, producing a massive storm system across the UK. So we can see these sort of chain reactions occurring, and that is why it's going so exceptionally stormy later this week. But at the moment, a few showers around. Nothing too extreme, but just slowly turning more and more unsettled as we start to see lower pressure replacing the higher pressure. Now, to put on the temperatures, we're going this slightly later in the evening, around half eight in the evening now, and you can see where we escape the thicker cloud and showers, temperatures are dropping close towards freezing, but where we have those showers hovering more around the low to mid single digits. So still cold and below average for most, but those temperatures will slowly creep up this week. We'll probably still stay below average all the way until the storm system arrives on Friday, but it just won't be as frosty or as crisp as it has been in the prior days or through the weekend. It is slowly turning a bit milder, but doing it ever so gradually. Now, if you look at the latest weather warnings, we do have one warning issued for Friday and Saturday. And I'm expecting extensive upgrades to this, both in its size and in its intensity. Now, at the moment, it's from midnight on Friday morning until midday on Saturday, so 36-hour blanket warning for a very deep area of low pressure, bringing strong winds and some disruption. We'll look at the UKV in a minute. The main sort of high-resolution run from the UK Met Office. Of course, they've got slightly higher resolution than we can see, and they've got more runs than we can see. But it's the same model, and you'll be able to see why they've put this warning in force 5 days in advance. And you can see a very deep area of low pressure is expected to pass close or across the northwest of the UK on Friday and Saturday. This will bring a spell of very strong southeasterly to southwesterly winds, with gusts reaching 50 to 60 inland, 70 to 80 along the coast, and perhaps higher than this, so already opening up the possibility to upgrades. You can see already medium impact and low likelihood, so very close already to be seeing an amber warning issued. And of course, this is from this morning, so before the extreme run that's come out this evening. Of course, we've had many strong runs over the past day or so. But yeah, it does look like it could be really ramping up through this evening, so going to be keep a very close eye on this through Tuesday and Wednesday. As I said, there could be some big upgrades coming. Now, do quickly refresh it. This is the latest UKV, the 3 p.m. run. Now, you can see a few bits and bobs of showers around over the coming days, but nothing too major through the rest of Tuesday. Perhaps a little bit more persistent rain across the far southeast there through into Wednesday. We'll keep temperatures above freezing, but it won't be much above freezing, probably kind of 3 or 4 degrees with cold, drizzly rain. So probably even worse than if it was 0 with clear skies. Through Wednesday, we do see a bit of a lull in that precipitation, not too much going on. But then as we head into transition into Thursday, thicker cloud builds in from the west. A bit of heavy rain moving in, a preliminary front. And then look what arrives into Friday. A beast of a weather front. You can see this big hook associated with that system, symbolic of a really severe low pressure system. Snow across some of the higher ground on the leading edge, but for most it will be rain. That clears through, and then we see the cold front sweeping by, and then you see lots of heavy thundery showers pushing in with some snow mixing in. And it's when this weather front clears at this point early on Friday, that's when those exceptionally strong winds could arrive on the southern flank. As I've said before, you don't always get exceptionally strong winds with exceptionally heavy rain. Sometimes they coincide, but in this sort of scenario, we will be within the occluded front, so where it's more squally, where it's more on and off, heavy showers than persistent rain when those exceptionally strong winds do arrive. And then eventually into the weekend, we remain with this west to southwesterly flow. Cold air still flooding in off the North Atlantic. It's an unusual direction to see very cold air, but it's because such a big plume of exceptionally cold Arctic air has been pushed into the North Atlantic, and we're seeing the remnants of that crossing to our shores. If we do look at those upper air temperatures, you can see it's chilly at the moment, and it will remain chilly through much of this week, around average or below average, especially at the surface. And then as we head into Friday, a big warm front moves in, followed quickly by its cold front, and that really is just making this storm very severe here. This exceptionally high temperature contrast with this big wedge of very mild air. That clears, and then we see that cold polar maritime air flooding in, especially for the northwest. You can see it doesn't make much progress. It pushes in, and doesn't really increase, and actually starts to retreat. And that is, as I said, all because it is crossing a pretty mild Atlantic, so of course it gets moderated quite significantly. And you can see that even with that very cold upper air temperatures, the dew points do struggle to get below freezing. Again, because this very cold air mass picks up a lot of moisture, giving rise to those dew points. So again, a classic very cold polar maritime air mass. However, we're just looking at the sort of minor impacts here. Yes, snow's possible, heavy rain's possible, growlpool, hail, all a possibility and can cause disruption. But it's the winds that we are really concerned about here. As we press into Thursday and Friday, look at that pressure gradient from around 1,010 millibars in the far southeast to around 970 millibars across the far west of the Republic of Ireland. And you can see the system moving through down towards 936 millibars, I think, towards the centre of that system. Yep, 936 millibars, so an exceptionally severe area of low pressure. I highly doubt it will be this deep, but 950, 960 definitely looks like a real possibility. But yeah, if it got down to this sort of level, then we would be looking at a historic storm here. And you can see it's through that Friday morning into the afternoon along that southern and eastern flank where those winds will be severe. And if we do look at those wind gusts, not too much going on Wednesday, not too much even going on through Thursday morning. And then it picks up during Thursday afternoon, looking breezy. But then the main event arrives into Friday morning. Very strong winds, yellow warning winds arriving widely 50 to 70 miles per hour, creeping up towards 80 or even 90 early hours of Friday. And then look at this big blob of purple arriving for the west coast of Ireland, the Northern Ireland, heading into western parts of Scotland. An exceptionally large area of 90 to maybe as high as 120 miles per hour. Not only some of the most intense winds I've ever seen from the UKV run, but also the largest sort of wingspan I've seen of these sort of purples. Normally you do see them in the core of the winds for named storms, but never seen it to this extent, looking very severe. And of course, if this did occur, we would look at widespread amber warnings, probably all the way down to kind of North Wales, Northern England, the whole of Scotland and Northern Ireland. We'd be looking at red warnings for much of Scotland and Northern Ireland here. It would be really severe and dangerous. And of course, if this system was slightly further eastwards and southwards, then would be even more widespread impacts as this clears through. The only fortunate thing at the moment is it's 4 or 5 days away, so things can still change. And I do suspect it will downgrade from this, as this must be on the right, the top end. We can't get much more severe than this in the UK, so it is right on the top end, but it is a possibility. So we do need to keep a very close eye on it, as this could be really historic if that did occur. Now, do look for temperatures you see overnight with more extensive cloud and a few bits of bobs of showers around this evening. Temperatures not dropping too low, still 3 to 5 degrees, so still cold, just not towards freezing. Doesn't rise too much tomorrow, 6 or 7 at best, so not too much of a diurnal range as we head into Tuesday. And then into Wednesday, a little bit more in the way of clear skies further northward, so more towards freezing, but most still low single digits. Wednesday afternoon, not much of a diurnal range once again, 3 to 7 degrees, so really chilly for much of this week. Average temperatures around average or below average for the time of year. And then into Thursday morning, more of a widespread frost, so we do see some clearer skies and some more still air. And the same can be said into Thursday afternoon, still pretty cold, 6 to 8 degrees. And even into Friday, initially cold in the morning, then that big mild wedge pushes through, could get just about to double digits during the morning. But then when that cold sector and those exceptionally strong winds push in, temperatures will tumble into Saturday, potentially a frost for many into Saturday morning. And by the afternoon, not getting much above kind of 4 to 7 degrees, very cold there back into the weekend. And not getting much above freezing there for Scotland. And of course, with those heavy showers, blustery winds, could even be some blizzards around. So yeah, looking exceptionally lively later on this week. Won't say much more than that, just because it is still a good few days away. But if we see this pattern recur tomorrow and on Wednesday, then as I said, we could be looking at a very historic event. Now, if you move over to the longer range, not too much going on today, not seeing too much change, so we won't go through this too much detail. But you can see at the moment we've got pressure lowering, as we do see high pressure trying to move up towards Iceland, just slowing the jet stream down for a small time this week. But that big cold plunge breaks through, and then it spawns this severe low. And if we do zoom in, we can see the centre of this low gets down to 936 millibars as well. So actually, that's very similar to the UKV. And that is not good at all. Winds up towards 150, 160 kilometres per hour. So again, we're looking at 100 mile per hour gusts. So yeah, I know I said that UKV was perhaps anomalous. GFS is showing a very similar pressure level. Maybe not quite as strong winds, but similar pressure level, which is not good at all. Now beyond that, we see another round of potentially severe storms into the early part of the week. Perhaps nowhere near as strong, but still gusty winds, heavy rain, potentially still could be named. As you can see, these lively systems move through. So perhaps not quite as clear cut into next week, into the final week of January, but still relatively stormy and unsettled. Beyond that, we do see a bit more of an influence of higher pressure, oscillating between high pressure and low pressure over the top of us. And you can see right at the end of the run, we've got pretty much flat as a pancake jet stream, which means although, yes, it will remain unsettled, it will be milder, and the very stormy conditions will retreat back towards the Arctic. You can see this very strong jet stream right over our heads, coming in directly from the west, and actually most of us are on the mild side, so it would turn a little bit milder there for the start of February. Now, if you compare it to the GM, again, I'm very interested to see the severity of that low on Friday. Again, you can see it spinning up there, heading towards our north and our northwest. To be fair, it looks as strong. If we do look at the pressure, down again to 936 millibars, but it's slightly further out to shore, which does give me a bit more confidence that those strongest winds may stay more out in the Atlantic. So yeah, we're looking at, I think, 183 there. It's pretty low resolution, but 183, so that is looking at 110 to 120 miles per hour wind gusts. So that is really horrible. Of course, West Central here shows it in kilometres per hour, and of course it's roughly 100 miles per hour is equal to 160 kilometres per hour. So when we're looking at 180 kilometres per hour, we are looking at around 110, 115 miles per hour. So exceptionally strong winds here. Red warning, very similar to the UKV, but more out to shore, fortunately. So it makes a big difference, that system being 100, 200 miles further westward. So again, we'll have to wait and see. That clears, and then another very lively system, not quite as deep, but still pretty notable, down to 962 millibars. And again, looking at those wind gusts, still looking at 60, 70 miles per hour. So there would be warnings, maybe even named to that system. And then it generally stays pretty unsettled right towards day 10. And if finally we have a look at the latest ECMWF, again we do see that big, lively system arrive there as we do head into Friday. And thankfully, it looks like this system isn't quite as severe. Still 946 millibars, so not down into the 930, so maybe 10 millibars higher. But look at its positioning. It's much closer to land. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like the wind gusts are loading there. Much closer to land, so perhaps, even though it's slightly weaker, probably because it's closer to land, it could be all that bit more severe for a more widespread area. So although, yes, a little bit weaker, the actual wind field could impact more land, so that's not good either. So yeah, not all runs are exactly the same, but to be fair, all of them are showing a pretty severe scenario. Definitely upgrades from the last couple of days. Fingers crossed this doesn't come off, as this could actually be really quite dangerous. But yeah, we'll wait and see before we call anything further. Beyond that, we do stay really unsettled, more low-pressure systems, with a diving jet stream down towards Portugal that could spawn up some really peculiar low-pressure systems before eventually, towards day 10, we do see that flat as a pancake westerly flow moving in, but interestingly, a Scandinavian high trying to build and trying to force some sort of easterly wind, but not really having too much success here. And again, won't look at this in too much detail because we've seen lots of easterly winds pedalled in the past week, and all of them have eventually got crushed as we get nearer to the event. Now finally, if we look at the latest ensembles, all over the place, but generally around average. A couple of degrees above, a couple of degrees below. A classic westerly flow. You can see the little ups and downs, symbolic of a bit of a zonal sine wave. Not as clearly cut, because we have got a lot of cold air mixed in. That's why we aren't seeing as drastically large, milder sectors, but still looking exceptionally unsettled and really quite horrible over the coming weeks. 2 meter temperatures, generally around the mid to high single digits, so hovering around average, maybe more above average in the longer term, more towards below average in the short term. So again, nothing too crazy, but no drastic improvement in the temperatures. If you look at the sea level pressure, you see lots of dips and troughs. Of course, that system on Friday, not looking too severe for London, as we're very far away from the centre of it. But if we look at Glasgow, you see it's much lower, almost 20 millibars lower, with most down towards 960 to 980. And of course, as I said, the centre is much further westwards. So for Glasgow here, being a couple hundred miles from the centre, that is really quite severe. So you can see the operational run there, which was as severe as the UKV, is yes, below the average of the ensembles, but not far below. So it does mean that majority are showing a very severe low. Not all showing what the UKV, GFS, GM was showing, but quite similar. So that is a worry, I must admit. And finally, if we look at the latest ECMWF, of course this is midnight run because the midday hasn't fully come out yet. Broadly very similar, not too much change here for Glasgow, hovering around average and above average, below average, lots of precipitation. And again, if we do look at the sea level pressure, a big dip there as we do head into Friday. And again, lots around that 950 to 980. Again, that is pretty worrying considering that the centre of the low looks like it could be a couple hundred miles away. Really not good. And we can see the 10 metre winds really spiking there through Friday. You can see some are pretty tame, but some are exceptionally severe. So we will have to wait and see. Not looking good at this point. Expecting extensive upgrades to those warnings in the coming days. But given we're still 4 days away from this low pressure system arriving, there still could be some alterations. And hopefully they're downgrades. But from the looks of this, yeah, we could be looking at a pretty historic event there as we do head into later this week. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. And I'll see you again for another video soon.